Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things you want to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, let's remove all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts. Alright, now that the wheel's off, let's continue on with some hose pliers. We're going to carefully pinch this to restrict the fluid flow leading down to the caliper. Once we have that on there, let's continue on to our Banjo bolt, which is essentially the area that the flex hose locates onto the caliper itself. Make sure you're wearing hand and eye protection and of course have a collection bucket underneath this area. Just get this to break free. Now I'm just going to bottom it out real quick, and then we'll continue on up here to our 2 13mm headed bolts. That one's nice and loose. Now we can remove the pair. The next thing that I always do is just hang my caliper so I'm putting no pressure on my flex hose. Let's continue on to removing our brake pads. Go ahead and slide those right out of there. At this point, you're going to want to inspect them. Make sure they don't look like they're damaged in any way. Obviously ours are new, but you want to thoroughly inspect yours. After that, let's continue on back here to our 2 21mm caliper bracket bolts. You'll find one down here and one located just above it. Remove the pair. Start that in there a couple threads. Remove your caliper bracket. Let's just put a lug nut on here to prevent the rotor from flopping around on us while we continue. Now we can continue on to removing our Banjo bolt from the caliper itself. We'll use our 15mm. Inspect that Banjo bolt, make sure it's still in good condition. We'll go ahead and set this aside. Carefully remove the flex hose from the caliper. Inspect that flex hose. When you inspect your flex hose, you want to look at both areas where the Banjo bolt goes through. On one side, I can tell that I do not have my copper crush washer on there. Looking at the other side, I can see that it's still stuck on there. You want to make sure you remove that so you can replace it with a brand new one. Grab onto that. Now let's just have a close look at the flex hose. You just want to thoroughly inspect it. Make sure it's soft and pliable. It doesn't look like it's torn or worn in any way. Oh yeah, that looks good. We'll just clean up the end here and then we can continue with our brand new caliper. Now we can start preparing our brand new caliper here. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this right around. Let's remove both of those caliper slider bolts. We can set this part aside. Now we'll continue on to removing these caliper tins here. Just carefully get underneath them. We're going to be putting these back onto their original positions, so just try to remember where everything goes. Let's take a little bit of high temperature caliper grease. We're going to come right along each of the edges where those caliper tins were. Once you have it lubricated, we're going to go ahead and put it on our tins. Looking at the tins, you can tell right along where my index finger is, this kind of extends a little further than this one up here. Also, if you were looking at the bottom side of it, or the back side, you're going to find that you have a short little flippy-do here, and a larger one. Essentially, we want to have the larger one facing out and away from the caliper, and we want to have this larger flat area facing down. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this right in here. We'll press it in, double check it to make sure it's secure, and then do the same to all the rest. Now let's move along to our caliper sliders here. Go ahead and carefully grab onto that. We're going to pull it right out of here. I'm going to press this down. We'll pop the boot off. Now at this point, we're going to continue on with some more of our high temperature caliper grease here. We're going to coat this entire shaft and then make our way all the way up into this little beveled area up closest to my fingers. That's essentially where that boot's going to ride. Let's continue with a little bit more grease here. We're going to come right inside this hole and then along the outer portion of the groove here. Once again, right where that boot's going to ride, super important. Now we can take our caliper boot. We'll go ahead and slide this right on here. Listen for a click. Give it a little twist just to make sure everything's seated. Go ahead and put it in position. Slide it down, press it over, give it a nice twist. Make sure it's completely secure so no moisture or debris can make its way in. And then do the same to the other one. All right, at this point the bracket looks pretty good. We can continue on by setting that aside. Let's grab onto the muscle aspect of the caliper here. That's the one with the piston. For this, what we're going to do is just take some more of that high temp grease. We're going to go right along the metallic aspect of the piston and then along the back side of both of these two ears. This is going to help with vibration dampening and noise reduction. All right, let's get back over to the vehicle. Let's go ahead and take that caliper bracket. We're going to get it right in position, lined up with the knuckle. We can take both of our caliper bracket mounting bolts. I always use a little bit of red thread locker on these. Now we can just go ahead and start in these two bolts. We'll snug them up and then we'll torque each of them to 125 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to install our brake pads. Pay attention to the back side. You're going to find a wear indicator. The pad with the wear indicator needs to be facing down and it needs to be facing towards the inboard aspect of the vehicle. Go ahead and slide this right in. Make sure it can move around freely. There we are. Let's go ahead and get the caliper on here. Now we'll start on both of these bolts. Once they're both started, we can snug these up and torque them to 26 foot-pounds. On. Now it's going to be time to get ready to install our flex hose to the caliper. Go ahead and take a peek at that Banjo bolt. You want to make sure it's clean and free of any debris and there's no obstruction inside the hole between this area and the top area. Once you're sure it looks good, let's continue on with our 2 new copper crush gaskets here. We're just going to go ahead and put one right down on here, slide it down to the bottom. We're going to slide this right on through the flex hose, take that other crush washer, put it on here, and now we can go ahead and line this up with the back side of the caliper. Looking at the back side of the caliper, you're going to find that it has a little rubber plug. Go ahead and pull that right out of there. Now we'll take that Banjo bolt, we're going to get it lined up, we'll start the bolt in here and snug it up. Okay, so it pretty much bottomed out right there. Just going to give it a little bit extra here just to make sure we put a little crush on those washers. Give that a nice tug to make sure it's completely secure. Now let's move up to the flex hose pliers here. Go ahead and remove those. Let's go ahead and remove that bleeder screw boot. Now at this point, you're going to want to go ahead and climb inside the passenger compartment. You're going to pump up the brake until it feels like it's nice and firm. After that, we're going to continue on with a bleed. Okay. All right, so now that I have fluid coming out of this, the next thing that we're going to want to do is start with a manual bleed. Now this is going to be easiest with 2 people. You can do it solo, but for me personally, I have a helper, so what I'm going to have the person inside the vehicle do is carefully pump up the brake approximately 3 times, very slow. They're going to hold it on that last pump and let me know. While they're holding, I'm going to open up this bleeder screw and we're going to be watching for fluid and air to come out. We're going to have to repeat this process until we see only fluid coming out without any air bubbles. With that said, let's continue. Go ahead and pump up the brake, please.
Hold him.
Pump.
Holding.
Pump.
Holding.
Okay, now on that last one there, I didn't see any air coming out. I always like to just kind of double check, so we're going to give it a last pump here. If we don't see any fluid from this one, we know we should be good to go. Go ahead and pump, please.
Hold him.
Oh, see? Right there, it's got a little bit more air. We're going to have to do it again. Go ahead and pump.
Hold him.
Okay. All right, now at this point, this looks good. The person inside the vehicle can go ahead and release the brake. We should be all set with them. So at this point, we'll just go ahead and clean up our mess so we can continue. You want to make sure you double check that master cylinder. If you need to add a little bit of .3 brake fluid. Now we can put the wheel on. At this point, we're going to start on all of our lug nuts. We'll bottom them out, get the wheel back on the ground, and then we can torque each of the lug nuts in a crisscross manner to 100 foot-pounds. torqued. Okay friends, we got our brakes back together. What's left to do now? Now typically you're going to want to make sure you do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle. After that, make sure you go ahead and pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Double check your master cylinder to make sure you're full of brake fluid. If it's low, add a little bit of .3 brake fluid. Other than that, take it for a road test, make sure you don't hear any funny noises. Thanks for watching.